I'm going to go and find Heidi. I know she came in here somewhere. Heidi, are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, good.
Can you hear me?
Yes, did I spotlight you? Yes, did I? Or was that accidental? No, that I haven't spotlighted you yet. I don't think, but I'm just wondering why I don't seem to be able to. That's very odd. Did somebody else spotlight her? Don't know. Are you seeing Heidi spotlit for you guys? Oh, there we go. Okay, found
There
where
I
to do it.
am.
Yeah, yeah. So hello, Heidi.
Hello.
Welcome. And I do
Hi.
have a slide for you. Just
Ooh.
the usual picture that we trot out every time you come and do it, talk at uh, at the Learn.
There I am.
Uh, Heidi's website is liveplaylearn.org. Heidi is an unschooler, and she does a lot. I know you work with a lot of parents and so on as well, and just giving support and guidance and encouraging parents who have chosen or want to unschool. And I know neurodivergence comes into the mix as well.
Yes.
Would you like to have interview style, or have you got a lot you just want to say and get off your chest?
If someone's happy to do interview style, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
It depends how you guys are feeling because I
No,
know you've had a
we're
long
kind
day
of
and it sounds like you've done
chatting,
really
and we
well.
kind of.
But
But I think what we'd like to know, I think for most of us, the interesting thing is like what led you to home educating, what your experience has been, um, kind of talking a bit about your journey. Sorry, my son left the door open, it just banged shut. I don't know if that was loud, that everyone heard that. But yeah, we kind of want to know about different people's experiences and how they got to where they are now, really.
okay, I can talk about that. I can say hi. My name's Heidi Steele. I'll do a little introduction. Um, I am an unschooling parent, and we have always unschooled. So I have four children who have never been to school. My eldest is 18, and then I have a 16-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 10-year-old. So we've been very happily part of the home educating community for 14 plus years. And they are all my children are happy living and learning as they go. I do have a website. It's liveplaylearn.org, which Juliet kindly had a slide for there. So you can find out more about unschooling and about our um, unschooling network. So we just connect with other unschoolers and support each other as we unschool and home educate our children. Um, One of the biggest things I get asked, I think, is about how we decided to home educate and specifically unschool, especially as my children have never been to school. So a lot of the families that I work with commonly hear stories about poor school experiences for their children. In various degrees, and how they came to home educate via that route. For me, it was a different story. I am a former teacher, so I worked in early years and I was early years trained for 12 years. And during the course of that time, I did work in lots of different schools and lots of different roles. Early years was kind of my passion, and where the majority of my training and professional development was focused. I had a really keen interest in how children learn specifically through play, and a lot of my training, I guess, focused on child development. And there's a really big disconnect between what we know about child psychology, child development, how children um, can learn very naturally, and that their way of doing that is through play, and then how we or how children are taught in schools. By the time my eldest was coming up to compulsory school age, um, I had a very strong feeling that I didn't want him to enter the school system. It was a little bit in response to him as an individual as well. At that age, he was bright as a button, but he was fairly quiet, quite reserved. I thought he'd kind of get lost a little bit in a classroom of 30. And so at that point, we decided that we would home educate. We also decided that we wouldn't introduce curriculums, that we would just continue to allow them to explore the world on their terms. And we also actively decided that we would give it a go. We would see how it went. We didn't make a long-term commitment to do it forever and ever and ever. But as it turns out, that's how we ended up. And we consciously made the same decision for each of our children. So we didn't just blanket decide, we're making this decision and that's what's going to, that's what all of our children are going to do. Every time our children came up to the age where families register for school, we consciously reflected on the child that we had and our family lifestyle as well, like how if they went into school, how it would impact our family. So every time we made a decision. So my second particularly, I was very, very aware that he would quite highly likely become the naughty child in the classroom, and I didn't want that for him. I knew that with all the best will and intention in the world, even if he wasn't specifically I'm going to say picked on, but like removed from the classroom or been on the sad cloud or whatever they have up on the wall, that whoever was responsible for him would have to say his name at least 100 times a day, and that by course of just happening would kind of put him in not a great position really. And so we decided that he wouldn't go to school. My third child was situationally mute and also has ongoing medical conditions, which I felt would be, both of which would be better addressed at home. And then my fourth child, I always say she could climb before she could walk, and even now, so she's 10 now, and the types of things she's doing are all very physically active. Like, she does not sit still. That's like not that's not an option for her. And I, intentionally didn't want those bits of their very natural personalities and things that we loved about them. I didn't want them contained in the way that they would be contained at school, and cause frustration or shame or feeling bad about themselves when that's not how we viewed them. So that's how we came to decide to home educate. Periodically, we've checked in with the children over the course of the years about how they feel about home education, and they've always stuck with it. They love it. In fact, my older two continuously say the best thing is that we get to be with our family all the time, which has changed over the years. They're not so much with us now. They've got their own friendship groups and they're stepping out into the world and doing their own thing. But it was an interesting reflection for me that the thing that they love so much would actually be the thing that is most difficult to maintain when children are at school for 6 hours a day, and when even when they are at home, they're occupied by homework. Quite often there's after school clubs which they may or may not feel the pressure to go to, with their friends. So yeah, it was an interesting reflection for me that that's the thing that they enjoyed the most. And our experience of home education has been a really positive one overall. Like anything in life, when you look back over 14 years, not everything is roses, and there's been times when we've I guess struggled with various things like knowing what to do or decisions that we're making. Certainly finding groups, people that we want to hang out with, or my kids want to hang out with. We've certainly been to groups where we've felt that it wasn't a good fit for us. So kind of putting effort, kind of putting that continuous effort um, into things until you find the sweet spot. Um, yeah, and I mean, as unschoolers, we've really just done a lot of the things that my kids love, which, I mean, I can give you some examples, but the things that my kids love are going to be different to the things that Juliet's kids love or Michelle's kids love. But we certainly when they were little, my boys were very active. They liked climbing trees, they liked going to the beach, they liked being in water. So we would go to the sea, we'd go to the river, we'd go to the local nature reserve. You couldn't get in the water there. But we do have a local country park, which has got like a water area where you can get in. Lots of play parks, lots of riding bikes and skateboards and scooters and roller skates, lots of really, really active stuff peppered with museum visits, because they also really liked things like Minecraft. So we went to a lot of museums that have geological areas so that they could actually see, not redstone, but obsidian, for example. And hands-on places like science museums, and we've got a local observatory where we are that's got very hands-on areas for children to experience the science that they're interested in. So lots and lots of going about and out and about. Oh, swimming, lots of swimming. We've done so water again.
May I ask you something, Heidi?
Yeah.
So some people think that if you unschool, basically, you don't need to do anything as a parent, and children can just do what they like. Um, there's different versions you hear, but basically the idea is that there's sometimes unschooling is regarded as a bit of a dirty word. Um, so I'm sure you've come across that, and how do you see unschooling, and how would you describe it in a way that actually demonstrates the positive of it?
I'd love to swap just for maybe a week or something with somebody that tells me that it's easy and relaxed, because I feel like it can be. The easy and relaxing things about it are that my children are engaging in things that they're motivated to do. So there's very little fight with my children about what we're doing. Sometimes there's a lot of negotiating because I've got 4 children and one of them wants to go swimming and the other one doesn't, and there's a lot of discussion that goes on. But in terms of parent involvement, we're really, really hands-on, coming alongside your children, being involved in what they're doing, bringing in new opportunities for them. Quite a lot of unschooled children don't, or typically unschooled children, they don't go out and say, I want to learn this maths curriculum, or I want to learn the Great Fire of London when I'm 7. Like, if you want to do that, there's loads of material out there for 7-year-olds on the Great Fire of London, because that's what they do in schools. There's a lot of pre-packaged stuff. My children want to learn how to paint their own nails and dye their own hair, and I'm trying to think of some of the more obscure things that we've done. Some unschooling children that in families I work with, they literally want to go and visit the places that they know about. So they want to go to Singapore and they want to go to Malaysia. It's really hands-on being an unschooling parent, trying to facilitate what our children are interested in, or synchronized swimming. So my daughters are really interested in synchronized swimming, and trying to find how they can access that when they're not the typical age for synchronized swimmers. It is hard work. There's a lot of problem solving that goes on, a lot of thinking outside of the box, a lot of trying to do things that are good enough for now whilst you're still trying to figure out how you're going to access
Yeah.
other things, and also bringing in new stuff for them, like giving them opportunities and exposure to stuff that's not naturally on their radar. Um, so yeah, it's
What do you notice? I mean, do you notice that your children are sort of naturally drawn to certain things, and that gives you an inclination of who they are and potentially what they might do as a career?
oh wow, that's a
Mhm.
that's a that's um that's I don't want to step into what they might do as a career. That feels like I might um be speaking too soon. But I've got 4 children, and I know, Juliet, you've got a whole
Seven.
bushel of children as well. Yeah, and so I don't know if you find this, but um, you know, when my children were younger. And they had access to everything. So one of the stories I tell is we've always had art stuff in our house. So my boys always had access to paints and paper and crayons and pastels, and like lots of different stuff was available to them, and they weren't interested. They particularly my eldest, he was interested in building things out of cardboard. He was interested in building things with Lego. He was interested in building things in Minecraft. He was interested in building things, and that just seemed to be where his natural inclination was, and where he spent a lot of his time. um, and my older two just didn't touch the art stuff. And then along came my third, and I think she decimated the whole lot in like 2 weeks. It was all gone. Because that was where she just navigated to. That's where her curiosity took her. That's what she wanted to jump in and play with. And she's 13 now, and she is still very creative. She's the one that likes doing the nail art, for example. It's kind of taken a bit of a twist and a turn, but like it's still that's I can still see that thread from where she started, like digging into paints and drawing on the wall. She was my child that, like, if you blinked for 2 minutes, she'd drawn a mural on the wall. And now she's doing intricate detail on nail art. For example, she does do a lot of other things as well. And as for my son, who was really into, so when he was younger, I thought, oh, engineering, like he's like, that's where he's going to end up. But as it happens currently, so I'm just going to say currently, because I don't want to speak into his future, he's really involved with um, nature preservation. So he works at 2 different places. One's a nature site, a local nature reserve, and the other one is a local nature trust for the area. And the other thing he really loves doing is being on the water. None of which have anything to do with engineering, which is why I laughed when you asked the question, Juliet, because
I
all
mean,
those
that's
years ago, I
interesting
was
because
really on like, oh,
yeah,
he's going to be an engineer, and now he's kind of gone left field and into something else. So
but
I
it
don't.
wouldn't surprise me if they all those things all came back in again at
Oh
some
yeah,
point, because that's all that foundational skill building. Um, and I think the thing with unschooling is often people sort of perceive it as something that, it's just like the Wild West, the children are like hanging from the roof, and there's often, as I said, like a negative perception. But did you find that your children sort of automatically came to a point where they were interested in things like reading or doing maths or anything like that? How have you sort of ensured that they have some of those skills that society would deem necessary for success?
I'd love to tell you my life isn't chaotic, and the picture that you just drew, but my particularly when they were little, it was really chaotic. And to anyone from the outside looking in, would just think it was completely bonkers. But to be fair, I always felt like that about reception classes when I taught in reception and had 30 children all playing different things. Like, to someone outside looking in, it looks completely chaotic and like nobody's got a grip on what these children are doing. But actually, the adults in the room are, and this is reflected in unschooling and in my family as well, like that the adults who are present know those children really well, and they can absolutely see the curiosity, the motivation, the meaningful learning that is going on in what the child is doing. And so yes, it is. It can be. It can appear quite chaotic, because the adult isn't. I'm going to use the word controlling, and or overly controlling
Or
what
leading.
is going on.
Yeah.
But the parents are actively involved in what is happening. As for things like reading and maths, my children have a really good grasp of both. They so we, as I said, we haven't introduced curriculums or particular frameworks for learning either of those things. They came to them very naturally on their own. We did, however, have lots of reading material in the house, for example, and audiobooks and visits to the library, and celebrating World Book Day. We've done that as part of our local home ed community. It's really actually very difficult in our society to not immerse children in literacy because we are a literate,
Yeah.
rich
Yeah.
society.
Yeah.
So it's actually hard to avoid it. But and so my children very naturally picked up on those things, and when they were ready, we read stories to our eldest every night until he was about 14, when he finally said, I'm all right now, I think I'll read I think I'll read my own story. And he could read long before that, but it was a habit for us to read aloud together.
Yeah.
And so that was part of our family culture,
Yeah.
that we that that we that we built purposefully built. Um, and so things like numeracy and literacy, that the irony of them being so important in the education system is they're so important because they're such a core part of the wider society, and therefore they're really easy to access because
Yeah.
we're, as a society, we're quite immersed
Yeah.
in numbers, and in, numeracy is more than numbers, but um in those things, it's actually really easy to access them. I mean, one, whether they know what a pre-fronted adverbial is, one of those
Is it
things.
what a fronted adverbial or whatever? Anyway, and I
Yeah,
don't
one of
actually know
them.
why anyone needs to know that because there's
Exactly.
other things that are more important.
But
Like,
interestingly, they might know what it is because it's so hilarious that they don't. It's probably
yeah,
gone round on a meme or something, and then they've gone, "Oh, what's that?" And then they've
yeah,
probably gone on and gone
exactly.
off down a rabbit
And
hole
and
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 actually
then it's
discovered
basically
for
a case of,
themselves.
oh, okay, now I know what that is. Move on.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's like all the knowledge is out there and can be
yeah,
accessed. Is
yeah.
this? I want to. There's somebody on the live stream who said. So this is probably in connection with the previous conversation where we were talking about the parents being supported to be parents.
Mm.
And this comment was that parents are important, but the village has a larger and more diverse impact on kids. Do you care to discuss that?
Yes, I love this topic. Community is one of the things that the longer I home educate, the more I reflect back and see how one of the reasons that we've been able to sustain this for 14 years is because of the people that are around us, because of the friendships that we've made, because of the local connections that we've made, because of the online connections that we've made with other families who are unschooling, being able to support each other, hold each other, direct each other, um, all those things that community um, do. And I I don't know how we would have fared without that. So when we talk about the village, it's a really active participation. Sometimes for a long time, not all of my children wanted to be out and about. Not all of my children wanted to be in large groups. Um, and so sometimes it was just a case of me connecting with other parents and me knowing who was out there and being able to chat with others, even if it was online. Sometimes it was about us as a family coming together with another with another family, and maybe the children weren't at a place where they were able to interact. And I say that delicately because I think um, they didn't get the social interaction as quickly as other children do. So they needed lots of repetition of meeting that same family over and over and over and over again. But just even being present with another family who is home educating, who is experiencing the world the same way you are, is really important. And then like the beautifulness of now we do sleepovers, and other people's kids that we've known for in fact some of them because of my 10-year-old, some of the like I knew them when they were born,
Yeah.
and they're because they've got older siblings, just they come and sleep over now, and
Yeah.
my kids go and sleep over at theirs, and it's and it's beautiful,
I
because
think,
everybody knows each other so well. Like I know that parent really well, my children know that parent really well, and vice versa. I get to look
yes.
after somebody else's cuddly toys when they go off to
Yeah.
play. They'll come and ask me to look after their favorite cuddly toy, and it's such a beautiful thing, just that confidence and that trust and,
Well,
and that relationship.
I want to go back to this comment though, because I think what this person is trying to say is that um, I I think they're implying that parents are important, but actually the kids need to be out there, um, almost as if it's a bad thing to be with parents. That's kind of the sense I'm getting, and I
Mm,
think I want to what I
see.
what I think that there's a role that parents play in terms of their children as they're growing. It's a bit like a young tree. When you plant a young tree, you don't always want the wind to blow it this way and that way because it won't grow up straight. So you put some protection around the tree while it's young and while it's being formed until it's strong enough to stand on its own. And I think parents play that protective role of being there for their children, not always, not helicopter parenting necessarily, but like we would be getting together with friends and other people, but you'd always be there somewhere in the background, keeping an eye as your child discovers the world and is working on relationships and talking to people and learning conversational skills and negotiation skills with friends. As a parent, you were kind of always keeping an eye in case the situation got difficult or there was anything that you needed to be concerned about. But so they were able to grow in an environment where there's somebody looking out for them. Um, where I think the issue for me, and I don't want to necessarily compare with school, but in school, you've got a class of 30 children, and it's not always possible for a teacher to make sure that all children are feeling safe in that environment, where they might be exposed to some negative behavior, uh, aggression, these kinds of things. So it's just a slight shift. I mean, because we don't, like, as home educators, we've never existed in isolation. We are social beings, so we've always had a wider community. And the children were very secure because they knew that mum's just there if I need her. But I can go and run off and play, and I can go back and check that she's still there, and then I can run off. And my children are all extremely social beings that get on well with everyone, and are negotiating, making their way in life, working, studying, all the different things. And it's not, I feel they are far more secure in who they are because they've had, as when they were still younger and they needed that protection, that inner sense of self was protected, um, until they were strong enough to kind of sort themselves out and know how to answer if there was a difficult question, that kind of thing. So
I
that's kind
love
of where I'm coming from with it. That's
yeah,
what I sort of think he was possibly trying to get at.
Okay. I love that
I'm going to
idea that you
have to cut you
described.
short soon,
Oh,
but
okay.
finish your
Okay.
thought.
No, I just love what you were saying there about, our children have this opportunity to run off and then come back. I call that the bungee rope effect.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you're there and you're there constant. And then one day they run off and and sleep over someone's house. And then
And they
another
but they
day
don't
in the
need to
future they
check.
run
They
off
don't
and
need to
they
check
go
if you're
traveling
there
the world.
because yeah, but they don't need to check that you're there because you've been constant.
Hmm.
They know that if
And
they
they're
need you, you
confident
are
in
there.
themselves. Like
Yeah,
you said, they've got to a point where they're confident in themselves. They can
yeah,
advocate for themselves. They can, respond,
yeah.
confidently. They've got a really good self-awareness, and they've acquired their own tools. It's a very much more a natural way of them growing in independence and socialization,
Yeah,
rather than kind of forced separation and forced socialization, which
exactly.
is
And I think
happens in other
yeah,
places.
and I think the thing is that often it's a um people think that if you're home educating and if you're talking about the parent, the parent, that you're actually not considering sort of the wider impact of the village on the child. But the thing is, when you've got as the parent, you're able to ensure that that village is a safe space for the child to be. And as I said, not by helicopter parenting necessarily, but by judging what's appropriate in what situation. Anyway, so thank you so much, Heidi, for joining us.